Think about the word disappointment for a moment. Notice how heavy it feels in your body. For many people, it brings an image of a face falling. A silence at the dinner table. A long pause on the phone. Disappointment feels like danger because for most of our lives approval has meant safety. We learn very early that being loved is connected to being good, and being good often means being obedient. We follow rules before we understand them. We accept expectations before we question them. We carry dreams that are not fully ours because they were handed to us with care and fear mixed together. This is the quiet background of many lives. We grow up inside stories written before we were born. Family stories. Cultural stories. Stories about who we are allowed to be and who we are not allowed to be. At first, these stories protect us. They give us shape. They give us belonging. But at some point they can begin to shrink us. And then a choice appears, often without warning. Stay safe by staying small, or risk disappointment to become real. The context of this struggle is deeply human. Parents usually want the best for their children. But best is often defined by survival. Especially in families shaped by danger, migration, or loss. Rules are passed down not as cruelty but as armor. Do not stand out. Do not bring shame. Do not risk exclusion. Do not break what kept us alive. When you grow up inside that logic, wanting something different can feel absurd. Like claiming an identity that has no language. Like naming yourself into a world that does not recognize the name. The first insight is the surface idea that disappointment feels like failure. We are taught that disappointing our parents means we have done something wrong. Something selfish. Something ungrateful. So we bend. We hide parts of ourselves. We edit our truth. We delay our desires. We tell ourselves maybe later. Maybe when things are easier. Maybe when they are gone. But the cost of this delay is quiet and steady. When you deny yourself long enough, fear becomes normal. You fear being seen. You fear choosing. You fear your own voice. Life becomes careful. Safe on the outside. Tight on the inside. You may succeed. You may look fine. But you feel disconnected from yourself. Disappointment in this sense is not just something you cause others. It is something you feel toward yourself when you do not show up. The second insight hides deeper. The fear of disappointing others is often stronger than the fear of losing yourself, until suddenly it is not. There is a moment for some people when the worst thing happens. The truth comes out. The rule is broken. The family reacts. Silence follows. Distance grows. And something unexpected happens. The fear collapses. When you have already lost approval, there is nothing left to protect. When the worst has already happened, the future opens. It is painful. It is lonely. It is not romantic. But it is clear. Fear thrives on anticipation. Once anticipation ends, fear weakens. This does not mean loss stops hurting. It means fear stops controlling. And in that space something else appears. Freedom. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind. The freedom to try. To speak. To create. To fail without begging permission. Many people only find their voice after they stop trying to be good. When they stop measuring themselves against someone else's rules. The third insight is about structure. Families and cultures run on inherited rules. Rules about gender. About success. About respect. About love. These rules are rarely questioned because they come wrapped in care. But rules that once protected can later imprison. When you inherit rules without choosing them, you live someone else's life. When you examine rules and decide which to keep, you begin to live your own. This examination often feels like betrayal. But it is also a form of honesty. And honesty changes everything. When someone stops performing goodness and starts telling the truth, their work changes. Their relationships change. Their sense of purpose changes. Creativity often appears here. Not because pain makes people talented, but because honesty removes blockage. When you stop trying to fit, energy is released. Words come. Images come. Ideas come. The work begins to speak because it is no longer filtered. It carries the weight of lived truth. And other people feel that. They respond. Not everyone. But the right ones. This is where the reframing happens. Disappointing your parents is not about rejecting them. It is about refusing to disappear. It is about separating gratitude from obedience. You can love the people who raised you and still choose differently. You can honor their sacrifices without repeating their fears. You can recognize that they shaped you without allowing them to own you. This reframing does not erase pain. It gives it meaning. It says conflict does not always mean harm. Sometimes conflict is the sound of growth. Over time, relationships can change. Not always. But sometimes. When parents see that difference does not equal destruction, fear can soften. New terms can be negotiated. Love can return in a different shape. Less controlling. More honest. Even if reconciliation happens, it happens because you stood your ground, not because you retreated. And if it does not happen, you still gain something essential. Yourself. Applying this to daily life does not always mean dramatic declarations. Sometimes it is small. Choosing a path your family does not understand. Loving someone they would not choose. Making work that feels risky. Saying no when yes is expected. Speaking a truth gently but clearly. Each small act builds courage. Each act weakens the old rule that says your life belongs to others. You may notice fear rise. Guilt may follow. These feelings are normal. They are signs that you are stepping out of obedience. They do not mean you are wrong. They mean you are changing. In practical terms, this can look like letting your work reflect your real questions instead of safe answers. It can look like having hard conversations without trying to win. It can look like allowing disappointment without rushing to fix it. Silence does not always mean rejection. Sometimes it means people are adjusting. Optional deepening comes when we realize this challenge is not only about parents. Parents are the first rule givers. But the world continues the pattern. Employers. Communities. Audiences. Platforms. All reward obedience in different ways. They reward fitting in. They reward safety. They reward repetition. The same question applies everywhere. Are these rules ones I would choose? Am I acting from fear or from truth? When you practice disappointing your parents, you practice disappointing the world. You practice choosing honesty over approval. Over time, this builds a life that feels aligned. Not easy. But real. And something important shifts. You stop needing permission. You stop asking for validation. You begin to trust your internal compass. That trust becomes your anchor. You become less afraid of loss because you know what you stand on. This is not about rebellion for its own sake. It is about integrity. About living in a way that does not require constant hiding. When you are honest, fear loses its grip. When you are less obedient, you become more alive. So as you think about the rules you inherited and the dreams you postponed, you might ask yourself, which expectations are you still following out of fear of disappointing someone else rather than out of loyalty to who you truly are?